I've been a part of hundreds of new product development and innovation sprints throughout my career. Whenever any CPG industry colleagues ask me about my personal flavor preference, I usually say citrus. And that makes a lot of sense when you realize that my favorite childhood pop growing up was Squirt or Sprite, and that I probably ate my weight in orange and lemon Starburst. Even as an adult kid, my go to powdered supplements, hydration beverages, or energy drinks usually center around citrus flavors. I'm mentioning all of this because you'd think a citrus lover like me, I would be acutely aware of Matt McLean and his company Uncle Matt's Organic, but with the decade long massive proliferation of products and brands across the different functional CPG categories that I deeply analyze, it unfortunately creates blind spots or the inability to dig deeper across the entire CPG business landscape. Though that's the great thing about these conversational content pieces because I get to find those fascinating individuals that are indirectly related but pivotal to my core functional CPG categories. And I think you're going to love hearing Matt's story that spans a quarter century from a family farm side hustle to national CPG brand that exits to Dean Foods in 2017 until he buys back Uncle Matt's Organic several years later during the Dean Foods bankruptcy. There are lots of great and bad and ugly moments from the Uncle Matt's Organic journey, but we talked through how everything made the company's strategic approach, mission, and vision stronger, including his passionate commitment to lead from the front and push the citrus industry forward. Whether that's involved with overcoming the extremely impactful citrus greening disease, regenerative and organic farming practices, or philanthropy, we end the conversation with another area that Matt likes to lead from the front, and that's product innovation. Even creating performance nutrition products with orange juice as the vessel. But these are just some of the interesting topics we chatted about in this episode. So without further delay, here is the recent conversation I had with Matt McLean. So I was thinking the other day, there was a kind of a business milestone for myself. Like I've been in business, so my consulting practice for 13 years. And I made a post around that kind of milestone. And really, the back end of it was really kind of focused on what I believed was, I think a really important thing for anybody to kind of find. And that is like a passion, a mission, like an assignment of life, like having something that you feel like your work matters. I think that's like an unbelievable gift. And it struck me while doing some research for this recording that I think we're extremely aligned with that. I think from the mindset standpoint, like your passionate commitment to, a number of different things I think we'll get into through this conversation, but I think it's definitely going to be a good one. I'm excited. So Matt, I just want to thank you for the time that you took out of your schedule to join me.
And likewise, appreciate the opportunity to tell my story and talk with you and your listeners.
Yeah. So let's kind of, I don't want to scare people right off the bat, but I do think there's a specific topic that I don't know if I knew about up until a few years ago, and that was when I was doing some product development work, and I was at a flavor house, and they were talking about this specific thing around the citrus greening disease, and just kind of the broad impacts, not only just from higher priced OJ, but just kind of how that trickles across the supply chain. But from your perspective, because you know it much better than me, like give a sense of like how that's impacting consumers, like what is kind of coming up next.
Yeah, so citrus greening disease is definitely our single biggest issue in the citrus industry, and not just in Florida, but globally. It affects everybody in all climates. It affects Florida, I believe, the most because of our subtropical climate. It's hot, humid. It's sort of the perfect conditions for that bacteria to thrive. It's not any kind of health issue for humans. So you're not gonna, if you drink, orange juice with greening bacteria in it, you're not gonna get sick. It's nothing at all. It solely just affects the plant and causes issues within the phloem, the main artery of the tree that takes nutrients and water from the rain into the leaves. So it affects the tree. It has devastated our industry in Florida. We're probably half the acreage and definitely way less in crop. In our peak, we had 250 million boxes that we would harvest out of here. I mean, we're lucky to get 25 million now. And I'm talking not like 50 years ago, we had 250 million, 15 years ago. So just a massive difference to our industry. There is no cure, conventional or organic, at this stage. It's spread by a little vector, which is an Asian citrusilla. It's a little insect, comes and bites the leaf. It feeds on the leaf for food. And if it is infected, not all of them are infected, it will transmit that bacteria and that disease into the leaf, which then goes into the main artery of the citrus tree. For whatever reason, the tree doesn't really recognize it as a pathogen, and it winds up just destroying internally and clogging up that phloem. And so you can't get nutrients and water moving throughout the tree. Therefore, you'll have some branches and limbs that turn yellow, and the fruit stays unripe, stays immature. It stays green, hence the term greening disease. And so that fruit will fall off prematurely. That limb will eventually die. And more things, it then just starts affecting the rest of the tree before it becomes non-productive. And the fruit that you do get off of it has really high lemon notes, so it just doesn't taste, because it's immature and green. So when you're picking the rest of the fruit that tastes good, that one limb now doesn't taste good, and they can't really segregate it or separate it. Before long, the whole tree it devastates the quality of your juice, the end product, and then it kills the producing tree. So it's a 1-2 punch for a farmer in an industry. You have a product that continues to decline in flavor, and then you have a production that continues to decline in yields.
From a agricultural standpoint, I mean, are there, and I'm sure people are definitely working on this, both from a area that would be kind of natural and kind of trying to find a way to make plants probably more resistant to this or whatever. And then I'm sure there's the opposite side of that, of maybe trying to use, some food tech or, CRISPR or whatever that is. Like,
Yep.
is that what's kind of, are people trying to move to that? Because I'd imagine, this is such a big problem that there's a lot of money and great kind of resources, mind share, trying to figure out how do we solve for this.
So globally, there has been a mass amount of money and attention thrown at it over the last decade, especially here in Florida. We have a specific grower fund for it. The growers have their own group and their own board. My brother served on it for a while to try and expedite research and jump through any kind of government loopholes for funding or whatnot. So we've attacked it as an industry, as growers funding it, and then also getting government research grants. Work with the University of Florida down here. We work with other land grant universities, really anyone around the globe that we believe could find a cure. And so they've spent lots and lots of money on it. Unfortunately, there still has not been any solutions to it.
I don't want to get us totally off track here, but I have made a few comments over the last handful of years or so, and I think that it's more towards the CPG side of the space, and just letting them know, or not necessarily using scare tactics, but just the reality of hitting people in the face that I think they're a little bit unready to handle, if it's ingredient shortages or price hikes or supply issues that are caused by, if it's climate change, is it population growth? Is it, something like this with disease, or, something that comes up over the next few decades? Because I think you're already seeing in a few kind of areas that's already happening, but I think it's a lot more broad, and it's going to happen in varying degrees. And it's kind of, it's just super interesting, from my perspective, because I'm typically the person that's the counterpuncher, that's, looking at, some of these in the model and saying, okay, how do we, hedge against that? How do we move here? How do we make sure that we have buffers here, there, or wherever? But it's become such a point where a lot of times I'm like, wow, we have a lot of just things on the board that look scary.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, greening, if we don't find a cure, you're going to continue to see supply go down, right? And so we've had the highest juice prices, the highest fruit prices and juice prices we've experienced in the last 2 years that I've ever seen, right? And if you look at what Brazil's crop looks like this year, they're on the opposite season as Florida. They're experiencing strong issues with greening, and so their crop is less, and it's spiked the futures market way up. Florida had a really good bloom. Mexico had a really good bloom. And then they had 3 months of drought, low rainfall. And then we had great rainfall over the summer, and in some places it caused a second bloom, which is a little odd. So you can't quite seem to catch a break the last couple years, in addition to greening causing less and less acres. But they are, I mean, they're trying anything from classical breeding, which as organic growers, that's what we would support, not necessarily the genetic modification, the CRISPR technology. If they can find a cure that way, fine. I mean, that's the conventional solution. Organically, we look for, is it classical breeding, or are there other things that we can do either through the soil to turn on that tree's natural defense mechanism, or something, you could trunk inject or organically that would work. They're using antibiotics. Conventionally, they'll trunk inject oxytetracycline, and that has some limited benefits. It's really mixed on the outcome of those. The problem is, you still, even if you clear out that phloem from the disease, if you still have a tree that's in a weakened state, the psyllid, the little vector, can still come back and reinfect the tree. And that's true for organic as well. So we really have to, it's two-prong approach. How do you control the vector? And then also, how do you, cure the tree from the disease it's within and keep its immune system strong?
Let's move more towards your story.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've scared people enough, though maybe you'll have, some good, bad, ugly type things across your journey. But I think initially I want to start on, the time frame that, you could maybe start even before the, I guess, original start of Uncle Matt's, but like the 18 or so journey from, the family farm to national CPG brand to that liquidity event with Dean Foods in like mid 2017. Like, regardless if I think, there's some trending movements on like TikTok and things where like Gen Z and millennials want to be farmers, and maybe they're disenchanted with the city life and they think farming lifestyles sound interesting. But even if you're not into that, and maybe you just want to start a CPG brand from an idea, I think your journey as a whole, I think, is super inspiring. But I think, obviously there's moments within that stick out in your mind, if they are some great ones, some bad ones, some ugly ones, that I think is important for people to hear.
So first off, I would congratulate anybody that wants to start a small business. That's the backbone of America. That's the heartbeat of America, right? For job creation. And it's just the American dream. So, kudos to anybody. I mean, CPG, if that's your passion, go for it. I had a mixture of agriculture and beverage that became my passion. So I was very fortunate. So every day it doesn't feel like work to me. I love what I do. So I always tell people to try and find that first. If you can do that, that's the best business to start, because then it won't feel like a job every day and you won't be looking at the clock. But you'll be having fun, and you'll be fulfilling a passion in your life. So, we had, in the beginning, I had another business. I graduated from the University of Florida with a degree in business. I actually wanted to get out of agriculture. I was tired of the hot summers of working in the citrus groves in Florida. And so I went to get out, and wound up getting right back in it, but in a little different fashion, not actually as a grower, but on the business side. I started an import-export business and started selling conventional juice to Europe and the Middle East. And that was a lot of fun. Got to travel to Europe as a young guy, which was a lot of fun to see other cultures, but also cut my teeth on great tasting juice from the French to the Germans. They all had different taste profiles, so it helped me from bricks to acid to oil, all of those things. I had my epiphany and aha moment in business for Uncle Matt's with one of those customers asking for organic grapefruit juice, and it took me down a whole journey and connected me all the way back to my roots and heritage in farming with my father and grandfather and great-grandfather. And so we went down the road of, hey, organic, we believe, was a better way to farm. It was connected to my great-granddad and my grandfather and their observations, what they saw farming organic before pesticides were invented. So that's all I really needed. Like, hey, this is great. I still carry that flag today. We could do it without, harmful pesticides and synthetic fertilizers. We're going to, by God, do it the organic way and the way Mother Nature intended. But for me to start my business in Uncle Matt's, you have to fund it. And luckily, I had that import-export business that was very successful, and that was able to supply the capital I needed in the beginning. I also was very expendable in life at that time. I started it when I was 27. I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I had found my perfect match in life. God blessed me with a perfect woman later. And she really helped me take Uncle Matt's to the next level. She's the creative guru and the marketing person behind Uncle Matt. She literally designs everything in-house herself. But you find the right pieces. I had another business that really helped me fund Uncle Matt's. I tell people that all the time. You either make it a part-time journey and don't quit your day job unless hey, I'm going to raise money and I've got a path for people to fund and help me, and a bank that'll support me, because you're going to have rocky times in the beginning. I mean, every business has a learning curve. It's just natural. And so you're going to not know what you're doing. Even the best consultants can help you. You're going to have hiccups and speed bumps, and it's going to take longer to scale than you think. And so just be prepared for that. I tell the entrepreneurs that come to me all the time, how much are you willing to lose? Look at your own personal wealth, your own personal balance sheet, and say, what are you willing to lose of that? And know that, okay, this is the amount. And when I get there, I'm going to have to either stop doing this, or I'm going to have to raise money. So if you're prepared and okay, like, oh, I just lost that nest egg, because it's, most of the businesses fail. But if they don't fail and you are successful, it's the best thing in the world. Being your own boss, and having success at it and doing something that you're passionate about, it is literally the best thing in the world to do. So it's worth the risk. And that's when I first started Uncle Matt's. I sat there for probably 2 years, just going back and forth, like, should I even do this? I had a good import-export business. It was growing. I loved what I did. It made perfect sense with the family and what I was doing in my life. And so I didn't have to take that risk, but I'd done all my research. I looked at it, and I had a really close friend who was sort of a mentor on the juice side. He had taught me a lot about the juice business. He said, look, man, you have done all your research. You know what you're doing. And there's an opportunity there. So you owe it to yourself to try and fail at this point in your journey. And that stuck with me that night over dinner. And I was like, wow, you're right. I do. I owe it to myself to try and fail. I would regret it if later in life I look back and say, geez, I could have been that guy. I could have been that brand. I could have been that company. And I was too scared of my own failure, and I didn't even try. So, I also tell entrepreneurs that, how much money are you willing to lose? And if you're passionate about what business you're going to start, go, try and fail. You owe it to yourself to try and fail. And, do your research. Don't just jump into it. There's a variety of steps that I tell people to look at and do before you just hop into a business.
When you were getting, I guess, kind of racking your brain at the end when you were doing the sale process, was it something where you knew, like, internally, like, hey, maybe this is the time for me to find a buyer? Or was it something that they came in hot and heavy and then you were like shocked and you said, oh, well, like, I was having fun, but now this maybe is a great opportunity? Like, what was that kind of process? Because I know there's so many different ways that goes, but what was kind of the way that you guys went with it?
So, our family, I mean, I was the uncle of Uncle Matt's. I had the largest share of the stock, but it was a family effort. I had my dad, my brother, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my mom, and my wife were all part of Uncle Matt's. And so we started in June of 1999, and that was just a juice company. That was myself, and my mom loaned me a little bit of money. And in 2002, we got into the growing side, converted my dad's little farm behind his house to organic. We started a separate company, a fresh fruit company, all organic. And so then we started converting growers to organic. And we started our own fresh fruit packing of oranges, grapefruit, tangerines. And it fed the juice company with all of its ugly fruit, went to the juice company. And so the two were harmonious and synergistic together. And they grew, up until 2009, we merged the two companies and then merged the family businesses together. And that was a lot of fun. And then 2012, we took an investment, a minority investment from private equity, from Greenmont, a group out of Colorado. And at that time, we just felt like, hey, it's the right time. Our little family business had grown, and we needed some expertise around the table. And we needed more capital to really take our brand to the next level, make it a real national leader, and fund our growth. And so that's what we did. And then in 2015, 3 years in of their investment, citrus greening started showing up. And we had 1,500 acres under our care. We had probably 35 growers. About 600 of those 1,500 acres our family personally either owned or leased. We had a third company called Uncle Matt's Fresh, or Uncle Matt's Ag, excuse me, that did all of the management of the groves and the growers. And so it got them certified. It did all the, mowing. It did the fertilizing, the spraying, anything needed on an organic program. So we had this whole model. And then greening shows up. And we're like, wow, what are we going to do? So we had to pivot the business model. Our growth started slowly but surely getting worse and worse. They didn't get as bad as the conventional out of the gate, so we did have a little bit more resilience. We did at least feel good about that piece. But then it got to the point where we don't have enough capital to just keep putting into groves that weren't producing enough. And so we had to make a decision, what were we going to do? And so 2017, we went to replace our private equity group that had been in for 5 years, and we were going to replace them as a minority shareholder. And it became clear that it was just the right timing. The offers we were getting were to buy the company, and nobody wanted to just replace them as a minority. And so we looked at it long and hard, prayed about it, and thought, hey, what is the right decision here? And it was a good offer. It was a very good offer. And we decided to sell the company and the brand. I said when I got in, I thought maybe it would be a generational business. But then at the same time, I said, hey, in all things, there will be a clear sign whether it's the right time to get in or get out. And it just was a lot of adversity in front of us, a lot of unknown going forward that we would have to fund. We would have to, pay a lot more money to get back into the ag side, the things around the branding that we needed. And there was Dean Foods, and Dean Foods was a really good partner. Great people. Unfortunately, the $8 billion publicly traded company had its own issue in dairy, and dairy was rapidly declining. And they had 70 milk plants. They had too much production, too few amount of volume, and they had a good amount of debt. And that debt ate them alive. And unfortunately, they went bankrupt. And so here we are in 2020. They went bankrupt in November of 2019. Pandemic hits in 2020. And we're scrambling, going, wow, what do we do? My wife and I stayed on with the company just for a 3-year contract to help, be good stewards of it. And little did we know we would be in the right position to purchase the company back, because we were close to the company. We knew, how it was growing. We knew the opportunity that was there. And I went out to some industry friends, and within 30 days, we had a new company put together. We had money raised from a small cadre of really good, passionate, organic, shared a lot of the same values as us. And we bought the company back in May of 2020, when most people didn't know if we would, if humanity would survive. And I thought, am I crazy? I think we're actually buying the company back, and I mean, what's going on? So, but it turned out to be a really great opportunity. We have since then way more than doubled the business, which is awesome, and just really enjoyed the ride since then.
Yeah, I remember. So obviously, because of how high profile that bankruptcy was with Dean Foods, I was following along and kind of paying attention. And, obviously the acquirer, I think, was Dairy Farmers of America. So they, as they're going through that process, they're naturally going to present a plan that, wants to focus on core assets. And, obviously that would be things around the dairy industry, maybe not around, the juice and the citrus industry. So it was an interesting situation, because not so much that even they were doing extremely bad with the business. It was more from a standpoint of strategically, the new buyer wanted to streamline the business, and it presented this like amazing opportunity, which, like you said, you kind of have
Right.
not necessarily even like a restart, but it is like a 2.0. It's kind of one of those situations where I'd imagine from your position, you have this opportunity, you're reinvigorated with the idea that you can, obviously continue doing a lot of the things that you believe wholeheartedly in, and it's your mission or wherever, but there is lessons learned throughout your process that if you needed to start back at square one, you probably would have done things maybe a little bit differently. And this kind of gave you the opportunity to quite honestly do some of those things because it was a little bit of starting fresh. I mean, like you mentioned, even the business landscape was completely changed, that
Right.
everybody was in a chaotic position, that they were trying ththings and kind of in a position that they were willing to try and kind of work their way through things. So it was kind of, it's all hindsight, in the moment, I'm sure it was craziness, but now you look back and you're like, oh, it all kind of makes sense.
Right. Right. It fell together. It was, you know, was it divine intervention? I don't know, but it all made sense and it fell into the perfect place for us. So it just happened to be, sometimes life is about timing, and getting that timing right. Usually to have a reward, you have to take a good amount of risk, right? And that was the pinnacle of that, to step into that moment. There was a lot of unknown. There was a good amount of risk involved. But it couldn't have gone any better. So, and yes, we got a second chance to go back at the business and look at it from, I learned a good amount from working with Dean. I went out there to Dallas every month to meet with leadership. I was part of the, top 40 leadership team because we were this little tiny unit that was plugged into this massive $8 billion, dairy machine. And so I got to see how that worked from a very high level. And the CEO would repeatedly tell me, like, how do I get the rest of the company to perform like you're performing? I'm like, well, I have some ideas if you want to listen. But he was great, and they were. It wasn't for lack of effort. They definitely were a hardworking team. They just had some really big hurdles and obstacles in front of them, and unfortunately, they couldn't solve them. So here we are today.
What were, I mean, a few of the, I guess, things that you, I don't want to say like, did better, but like evolved? Was it things
Mhm.
that, practices, business practices, maybe some, approaches, things that you could kind of pick out that you said, if you learned it from Dean or not, but just, from a standpoint of saying, hey, I got the second chance. Now, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to adjust here and here because I have maybe more understanding.
The second round, when we rehired, we made everybody owners.
Hmm.
So they get some percentage of stock to go along with it. They get stock options, right? And we didn't have that the first go around. Heck, we could barely make payroll some days the first go around. I mean, it was completely bootstrapped from day one. So the second go around, I said, hey, let's have enough capital. So in the beginning, we raised enough capital and we had a good runway. So we weren't just, oh my gosh, month to month, week to week. So to capitalize the business better, and then from there, make people operate like owners by giving them stock options, so they can take pride that, hey, you own a piece of this, uh, and so act like owners. You always want your employees, if you can get them to act like owners, it's just a whole better vibe. And I'm not saying it's perfect, but that was one thing that we did that I really liked. We also have instilled more of giving back to the local community, getting more involved in charity with our local community. In our program, we call it the 2 cents program, where we give 2 cents per case once a quarter. We choose a local charity. The company gets together and we let them choose. And we have a little thing we put on the package on the back of our OJ bottles, where we talk about that charity and try to give that charity more publicity and get people to donate and understand, what their mission is. So those are two things that have been a lot of fun and different from the first time. We do more also around A little tighter around KPIs. I'm a big around, you have to manage what you measure. And if you're not measuring, how can you manage? And so just everybody having real performance goals and KPIs, no matter what position you have. So I'm a little bit more dialed in around that. And just really our mantra to be consistently great. So no matter what you do, what position you have at Uncle Matt's, your KPIs and performance are around being consistently great. And our customers expect that of us. So when you open that bottle, every bottle you open, we want it to be consistently great. And if it's not, we're failing. We're failing you. We're not giving you the value and the expectations that you should have from our product.
Thinking about greatness, and part of that I think is for people to lead, from the front. And what I mean kind of by that is, I think there's especially people like yourself that, had these ideas that were maybe a little bit outside of the conventional route, that you wanted to push certain things that you believe it's, business practices. And I think that there's that kind of measuring stick of whatever you pick of these kind of attributes or core values or whatever they are, they move consistently, because not only are you pushing, but you hope that other people behind you or maybe beside you are also helping push some of these agendas forward. So when you look at organic farming, and then you look at, maybe we need to do that and regenerative, you talked about the
Yep.
purpose driven or charitable aspect of it. Can we move that forward? Can we move these things? Because leadership eventually moves into table stakes, and then it's this kind of cycle where you have to move forward and keep pushing and keep pushing and keep pushing, which I think is, for a lot of people, I'd imagine like you and myself, like we are very much people that are constantly, trying to advance and move forward and push the agenda. So it's not that it's anything different than what we would probably apply to any aspect of our life. But I think in business, a lot of times, especially companies that have been in business as long as you have, you start to rest on your laurels a little bit. You start to think,
Yeah.
oh, well, I've done all these things, instead of saying, what have I done today to prove my worth? What have I done to push, us forward?
Yeah, I say, I mean, my little saying, leaders always lead, right? And so, and I humbly say it, as a leader in our industry, in our space, we should be leading. And so, what does that look like? It's, leading from innovation and products, right? So, what else can we do within that space and that set? What are our customers asking us for? Making sure you're relevant to them, right? I mean, we can't just be, hey, we're an orange juice brand and that's what we do. And if you want something else, go buy it somewhere else. If it fits within that same sphere and that space, as long as it isn't, outside of our juice or refrigerated space, then we should entertain and look at it and say, hey, is this something we could be consistently great with? And does it fit, what we believe we could do for that customer? So, we're always wanting to lead, whether it's through new products and innovation, whether it's through telling the story or getting closer to growers or our supply base or sustainability. What are we doing out there from a B Corp standpoint? We're also a B Corp certified, glyphosate residue free. We're certified by the Detox Project. Those are some of those things are just natural evolution of our brand and where we want to go as a company that we think helps keep us relevant and really helps keep us as a leader, right? I mean, we're out there trying to always challenge ourselves to be better and to be consistently great for our customer.
And I think you made a good point there around kind of the aspect of making sure that the customer is, aware and on board, and you are making them care about the things that you're doing, and kind of explaining to them in a way that applies to both, what is important or impactful to them, but also how it aligns with you, and kind of that connection with your brand storytelling. Like, I think a lot of times I'll walk into a business and I'll see that they're doing, all these things that maybe I haven't seen done before. And I ask, the founder, I go, hey, I've never seen it. What are you doing here? And they'll go into this big eloquent, kind of discussion around why they do it and why it's so important or whatever. And I say, if I put my consumer jersey on, and I look at your social media, your anything,
Right.
like I don't hear you ever mention any of that. So
Yeah.
though it's great that you're doing it, you also have to, in a way, like
You have
show
to
that
convey it.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
you have to be, because I think that
Yeah.
that's what creates movement. And if you
Mhm.
are, trying to push, certain passionate endeavors, like you need to have people around you, behind you, that are helping you push the industry forward in the ways in which you believe is best. And I think a lot of that has to do with sometimes explaining some of that stuff that's going on, because I think the unfortunate thing about our society today is that we are so stimulated, we have so much noise, we have so much going on, that we turn into autopiloted humans. And it's
Sure.
only when we have something that cuts through the noise that makes us kind of perk up in our seat and go, wow, I didn't know that,
Yeah.
that was so important. I can think about an example for me, a handful of years ago, somebody explaining the importance of bees. I
Yeah.
didn't know. Like,
Interesting.
I just
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah. Yeah.
know, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden I hear it and I go, holy crap. Like,
Yeah.
why are not people
Yeah.
passionate about this? Like, I just, it
Yeah.
was one of, and I could probably think of a few other ones, but that was one that really sticks in my mind, that I was like, huh,
Yeah. The
weird.
amount of things
Okay.
they pollinate, the amount of things that help, put food on the table. I was a little backyard bee farmer for a while.
Mm.
It was a lot of fun. They were just mesmerizing creatures to sit there and watch. I would get a couple feet from the hive. It was right next to my garden, and I would just sit there and watch them for half hour to an hour. Come in, communicate to the other, group. One would go in, the two would fly off, and like, this is amazing. Like, what, you know? So
Fascinating.
yeah,
Fascinating. Yeah. They
fascinating
probably
creatures.
don't
But
get the credit. Yeah.
yeah. But to your point, you always have to be telling your story, right? And the effective story about kind of the why. Why do people, why should they buy you? Why are you different? And, today it's a social media world. So really, and the platforms are there for you to go tell and share your story. And sometimes it can be never ending. So we do our best to try and dive deep into all the different parts of Uncle Matt. So the ag side, my dad and brother are constantly doing research and development to try and find a cure for citrus greening, and so there's a whole blog on that. There's stuff around, health and wellness of what we're doing, our products and why they're better for you, the things we do in their ingredients and the particular things that we put in them, like the whole root of turmeric that's in there for helping inflammation and give you a little bit of fiber, a little bit of black pepper that we combine with that turmeric because it helps it make it more efficacious and available into your body. Just some of those things can go a long way with customers. And it sticks with them, right? You want to have that personal relationship. You want to make that, impression where they go, wow, I didn't know that. And now when they see your brand again, you're a friend, not somebody that's just trying to sell them something.
Now, you mentioned a few times kind of just product innovation, and I want to get into
Hmm.
this idea of I call it juice plus. I tend to like brand these things where there's energy plus, there's
Yeah,
hydration, and it's really just the functionality of these products. And I know that you
sure.
probably don't know my base case on all this, but I'll kind of explain it to you, that I think in the sense that beverages offering more than like enjoyment is one of these things. It's not a passing fad. It's definitely a reflection of something much deeper, much more like secular, in the sense of like health conscious, wellness kind of minded consumers. And a lot of this disruption of these multi-billion dollar or bigger kind of beverage categories is really because consumers are moving towards this like four-way intersection of really taste, convenience, nutrition, and functionality. And I think that can
Hmm.
go across any of the areas in which we talk about, if it's soda, if it's if it's energy, if it's
Yep.
hydration, if it's coffee, if it's juice, it's wherever.
Yeah.
And I think that that's where you move into this idea of like using the juice as the vessel for what maybe I guess the most obvious things of like, how do you double down, or how do you amplify certain things, like you'd mentioned, like maybe it's the immune, or if it's the inflammation, like there's something in there that like
Yep.
naturally the product already makes sense, and then you add some additional ingredients. Or what I found maybe most interesting about your product portfolio is you have a few much less obvious products
Mm.
like that are right in my wheelhouse, in the sense of an athlete pre-workout one, and then one that's
Yep.
like an energy, which I think is
Yeah.
like the non-typical product innovation side of where you can take juice plus, because I think most you see is like, let's ramp up the stuff around immune health or those
Yep.
types of things.
Yeah. So we dabble in quite a bit. I won't tell you that everything, all of my innovation works. We've got a boneyard back there of my bad ideas. But you got to be willing to try them. And we do have that capability. We listen a lot to our customer. I am the health and wellness. Although not the younger generation. I practice organic. If you went into our house, you'd see our fridge and our pantry is filled with it. And I exercise regularly. My goal is, can I live to be 100? And try to take no medication, nothing but just supplements and good Florida sunshine and exercise. So I look when I'm developing new products, can I find some of those healthier ingredients that will help with longevity, that will help with inflammation, that will help with immunity, that will help with energy, all those different things. And you're exactly right. Juice is a wonderful vessel. Orange juice just happens to be, I think, the best vessel because it has a wonderful taste profile. It has a wonderful health profile. It's high in antioxidants and C, and got some B vitamins and some polyphenols that are in there, which are great. And so you can add a bunch of different things. And so our defense product, we put ginger, we put turmeric. Those two things are pretty harsh. But orange juice can smooth it out some. So it's got a nice little zing. We added a probiotic because of gut health. I'm also big on the gut health piece and the access to your whole, the brain and immune system. And just really, it's very similar to the soil and tree health. Build a healthy soil, you get a healthy tree, get a healthy gut, you have a healthy body. And so, our defense product is orange juice. It's pineapple ginger. It's got whole root turmeric in there, 500 milligrams ground up. If you look at the bottom of the bottle, it's got it. You can see the little specks, the bright orange specks. A little bit of black pepper to help absorption, and then we throw the probiotic in there to even help more with digestive and immune support. So we do crazy things like that. People are like, "You put what in orange juice?" Oh. And I feel so good when I drink that product. I can tell you, post workout, to help with inflammation recovery. I love that thing. I put it as a base of my smoothie. And then we have an immune product where we take orange juice again. We take one of the highest antioxidant berries that's already known for fighting colds and flus, and that's the elderberry, Sambucus nigra, the black elderberry. We get it from Germany, from southern Bavaria. We combine it with orange juice. It makes a bright, beautiful purple. We boost the vitamin C up to 300%. We use acerola as one of the main things. That cherry, that really high antioxidant cherry, to help boost that vitamin C. And then we add zinc and D. Your typical, we use a vegan vitamin D. We use a zinc gluconate, which is a higher absorption form than your typical other zinc oxides and things like that. So, we're looking for ways to help the everyday health and wellness of a consumer.
I love it. And maybe that's the bias around where I've cut my teeth a lot around the performance nutrition side of CPG. And a lot of that is like, you typically see the approaches from, and I'm talking mostly formulators or product developers, they tend to have a certain lens that they look through.
Yeah.
And then you see something that is completely different, and it is refreshing. Not that it tastes much more refreshing than the typical artificially flavored powders, but also just the approach of it. Because I think what you're mentioning is ringing a lot more true for people. I think that people are taking a much deeper look at some of these products that they are ingesting and saying, are they as healthy as we think they are? Are they, doing what they say they're doing? And I think you get back to the roots of just
Yeah.
those tried and true things
I'm
over,
a
the
firm
special
believer.
stuff.
Firm believer. You are what you eat. Food is medicine, right? And so, why not try and do that on a daily basis with each meal?
Well, Matt, I appreciate the time that you gave, all the stories, insights, everything. It was great.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate it, and thanks for the opportunity to tell my story.
I hope you enjoyed this YouTube video. If you did, consider hitting that like button to support me. Also help me get to my new short-term goal of 4,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. I'd love to see you join me on this journey, but we need to fix the fact that I think slightly more than 90% of you at this point that are watching are not subscribed to my channel, and that makes me extremely sad. But I do want to thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next one.